Good evening, we're going to make a start. Thank you all for being here. My name is Andy Miah and I'm a professor at the School of Creative and Cultural Industries at the University of the West of Scotland. Really excited to have this debate here because I've been involved with the Olympic movement for 12 years now, and I don't think this kind of conversation has happened before. I've done a lot with anti-doping, written a lot about technology in sport, but you tend to have very similar conversations. Is it fair? Is it ethical? Should we allow it? Etc., etc. Rarely do you have a range of people brought together as we have tonight. And I want to give you a bit of an overview of what this event means to both us, but also the broader context of what it involves. And you'll see the logos all over the place, and any of you that work anywhere near the Olympic Games, you'll know how coveted those logos are, and indeed how complex they are to obtain. So this event is brought to you by a number of partners. First of all, our university. In addition to that, it is primarily through Podium, the London 2012 Higher Education and Further Education Unit. It has worked with the Research Council in the United Kingdom to put together a series of public engagement seminars in advance of the Congress that will take place here in Glasgow leading up to the Olympic Games in 2012. So every Summer Olympic Games, there's a pre-Olympic Congress. It used to be called pre-Olympic. Now it's called something else because of that O word. But nevertheless, it is the major Congress that takes place in advance of the Games. And for London, it's taking place here in Glasgow. The events are designed to develop interest, awareness of some of the scientific and technological issues facing sports. So there were 10 planned around the UK. This is one of them. This is the only one taking place in Scotland. And as part of the programme, they have been able to get this logo, the Inspired by London 2012 logo. I want to give you a bit of context to that, just to explain what it means. The London 2012 Games has numerous logos, and this Inspired logo, you'll notice, doesn't have the rings in it. It was designed purposely to allow people the opportunity to have events like this without having to get into conflicts with sponsors. So a massive programme of events has taken place around the UK, even if you're not aware of them, that have been inspired by London 2012, and this is one of them. I'm particularly pleased that we've been able to have this conversation around these games. It's very difficult to have challenging conversations about the ethics of sport, the values that underpin the Olympic movement within an official programme. And tonight's event is part of the official Cultural Olympiad programme of London 2012. So if you do nothing else with this Olympic Games, you've done this, and it can be recorded as an official part of that programme. It's challenging because, of course, these sorts of discussions are, and the particular one we're having, will get us into very difficult waters. And I'll begin by giving an overview of some of this context. We'll be lasting an hour and a half. I'll give a 15 to 20 minute talk, followed by Dr. Yanis Pitsiladis, followed by Francesca Steele. And hopefully we'll have plenty of time for you to ask questions and to have a real conversation, because what we didn't want this to be was just a unidirectional lecture-style format. We want to really get into the nitty-gritty of the complex world of human enhancements that is the world of sport. And leading up to London 2012, imagine what issues might be faced at that Games and in the future. So I think we are a unique event. I think this is something that hasn't happened at any other Olympic Games before. Certainly this notion, this word transhumanism, doesn't tend to find itself within the Olympic programme in any form whatsoever. But because of this unique way in which London has programmed its activity, it's allowed itself much greater flexibility than other organisations have enjoyed. through having also this distinct entity called Podium, whose job is to try to help higher education and further education get involved with the London Games. It's also provided this facility for us. This is the logo for Exemis in 2012. I dare say you won't be familiar with it, and even by 2012 you may not be familiar with it. But this is a congress that brings around 5,000 people to the city, so it's a massive investment for Glasgow, and a massive source of income, of course. So these are quite major events for the city in general. So what I want to do is try to achieve a conversation that I've not had before, and I've probably done over 150 of these sorts of debates about anti-doping. So much so that it gets quite tiresome and quite uninteresting. So I figured the only way to have the kind of conversation that I want to have is to create it, rather than just rely on people inviting me to things that ultimately don't go very far. To assist with this, we have two, I think, remarkable individuals in their respective fields. We have Yanis, who I've known for, gosh, quite a few years now. I think when I first moved to Glasgow, I gave some lectures at Glasgow University. I think that's how we met first. But have been involved with discussions about doping in sport ever since, really. And Yanis brings with him remarkable expertise, and I think, again, brings something that a typical anti-doping policy officer wouldn't bring to a debate like this. I think his particular career path, the way in which he's become involved with sports, doping in particular, will tell a very interesting story about the complexity of this subject, not least of which is working with the World Anti-Doping Agency, the organisation whose job is to oversee the conduct of athletes within elite sports. First and foremost, the Olympic Games, but WADA itself is very much seen as the benchmark of anti-doping policy, and to that extent it is the world leader in that area. Yanis is now part of the list committee that decides what sorts of things are acceptable and which are not. And I think his conversation about that experience, but also the complexity of that world, will be really intriguing. Francesca, who is photographed here, and I'm sure all of you have read the brief, is an artist, and again another voice that is typically not heard in this sort of conversation. Through her most recent performance, which you'll see footage of today, she has become a bodybuilder. And bodybuilding is, of course, one of those areas that is very much in people's minds when they think of performance enhancement, particularly illicit performance enhancement. And I think I think Francesca is probably unique, not just in the UK, but worldwide, as an artist that has done this. And we could have invited a bodybuilder to talk about that work, but how interesting it is, I think, to have an artist that has entered that culture and interrogated it, been part of it, and is able to express to us what that means and perhaps what's at stake. So again, we have an artist that's working across boundaries, and I think that sort of defines this event as well. So Francesca's competed in events, she's also gives performances at arts festivals, and you don't tend to have that kind of crossover at anything. And so what defines this event, I think, is that coming together of the science, the art, and the philosophy. I'm the philosopher, by the way, in case you were wondering. But of course, what we also do, and our school, the creative and cultural industries, are particularly keen on, is questioning those disciplinary boundaries. And so, in my view, the work that both Yanis and Francesca does falls in line with both science, art, all three of them, science, art, and philosophy. These kinds of subject areas can't be neatly separated out into terrains. And I think this will come through in the conversation tonight. So by bringing together those three areas, we've already done more than typically is the case. And of course, I will add to that when you see events like this, they tend to be about trying to build understanding and awareness of the horror that is doping. I mean, this kind of rhetoric pervades the world of sport, and it pervades it because people are so concerned about it. Tonight is slightly different, I think. We want to open up the conversation and interrogate the rules on which sport is founded, which of course is a very challenging thing to do with sports generally.